Hi, and welcome to Real Talk. I'm Audrey George with Audrey George Consulting, and I'm excited to introduce you to two special folks today. First, our co-host is Apurva Bhagali. She's a program manager with Microsoft. And our special guest today is Matt Kueker. He's the CEO of Kenway Consulting. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Audrey. Great to see you.
Really excited for this conversation. I think a lot of folks are interested in the tech industry. You both have very different roles and have had very different careers in IT. And I thought it would be really helpful for folks to hear about your paths, kind of Matt, where you've gotten to already, and Apurva, where you're on your way to. You both have really exceptional leadership careers so far, and I think you'll have a lot to share with folks. So thanks so much for being here. Matt, if we could start with you, could you just share with our listeners, who are you in the world? What are you doing? And how did you get into that role?
Sure. Oh my goodness. I'll start with where we are now, and then maybe a bit of history of how Kenway Consulting came into being, and I came into this role. So again, great to meet you, Apurva and Audrey. See you again. My name is Matt Kueker. I am currently the CEO of Kenway Consulting. I've been in that role for about 5.5 years. I describe us as a business-driven technology services consulting firm. We're industry agnostic. Our goal is not to be the biggest or the best, but simply each of our clients' most trusted and long-standing consulting services partner. I began my career at one of the largest global technology consulting organizations in the world. I was there for about 9.5 years. So clearly staying somewhere that long, it was a good run. I enjoyed a lot of it. About 6 years into that, the company IPO'd. And, things changed quite a bit with that, at least in my slice of the world. Fortunately, at that time, I was working with who ended up being Kenway's founder, close personal and professional colleague and friend of mine. And as he would say, he started Kenway not with grand visions of exits or were private equity owned, being private equity partners. It was simply to create the company we always wanted to work for, to put clients first, to put our employee relationship first, and trusted things like revenue, profit, and all of those other things that became very, very important after we IPO'd, but sometimes made it difficult to deliver our projects as well as we wanted. Put those things first and trust that all of the outcomes would follow. And that's what we've been doing now for 21 years. I was the second employee, I guess third, if you include our founder, in 2006. So I literally left, I think at the time, my former employer was about 550,000 global people. I never thought I would join a company of two, but I did based on what motivates me. And we can get into that, Audrey, later if you like. But one thing I knew I wanted was to join that group of people and continue the culture that we had started to form within that much larger organization. But I've worn literally every hat that one can wear. For many years being entrepreneurial, we were billing, leading clients, also doing business development, whatever that we needed on that given day. And I can talk about that evolution too, from pure entrepreneurialism to scale. But then in 2020, just before the pandemic, we took on private equity partners and I stepped into the CEO role at that time. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And I love it.
Outstanding. Apurva, let's jump to you. Can you share with folks who you are in the world and what it is that you're up to at Microsoft?
Yes, absolutely. Matt, that was really great, long, impressive journey. Mine's relatively shorter. So I've been a professional since the year 2017. Prior to that, I was a master's student getting my degree in electrical engineering. Post completion of that degree, I ventured into the controls engineering slash industrial automation space. And, I had a few jobs right outside of college, did some large scale projects, even though I was employed with medium sized companies. And most of my projects included me utilizing a lot of that electrical engineering knowledge that I gained. It was mostly related to industrial automation. And so I was heavily involved in programming, commissioning all of my programs, and going out to the site and doing all the heavy lifting. As an example, I was tied to a long-term project at UPS and later to FedEx and some other industries as well. And so getting that hands-on experience really shaped me as an engineer as I was trying to build my image and my, profile within the industry. And then And for the last 5.5 years, I've been employed with Microsoft. Honestly, my skill set within that controls engineering and industrial automation space actually landed me the job. Even though we think of Microsoft as typically an IT company, a software company, it actually houses a large part of individuals doing data center roles, and that's where I fit in. Right, data centers, house a lot of hardware and require a lot of core electrical engineering skill set, and so that's where I stepped in. My then manager realized that I had a lot of transferable skill set that I could get to the table, and being with my current company, it's been great. I took the jump from medium-sized company to a rather large one, and I had some big shoes to fill. And so I worked my way into engineering roles, kind of, got the grip on that in the data center space. And then very recently, I moved to a global project manager role, where my job now is more on the management side of things after having taken a quick deep dive into the electrical engineering aspect of things. So I'm able to lead projects better, I'm able to contribute better, and I'm looking to build onto that skill set and move upward in my leadership journey. So yeah.
So, Apurva, I want to
Hmm.
dig into that a little bit. What made you want to move from a mid-sized firm to an
Hmm.
enterprise size organization? And what kind of, are there any specific parts of your earlier experience that you think were most transferable? Like, were there
Yeah.
specific aspects that you think like this is why this is a fit for me, to help other
Yeah.
people like connect dots as to how they might think about their own development?
Right. So, as a student who's out of college and, working in the first job that they're offered, right? All of us have been there, done that, taken up the role that we were offered. I did the same. And I eventually always kept my goal in mind as to, moving to a larger firm, moving to a better organization where I can grow and kind of, become a leader in the future. Not to say that during those building years of mine, I did not give my 100% to those jobs that I was in. I absolutely realized that this training ground, there couldn't be a different option or a better, visibility role for me as well. And so I did full justice to the roles that I had then, while always being proactive about what's happening out there, right? What other companies are going to be well suited for me in the future? And I think that my proactiveness led me to actually zeroing in on that role that was available at Microsoft. Overall, I'm pretty active outside of work, whether it's contributing to women in tech networks or other activities as students that you can engage in, which is attending conferences, viewing series like this where there's leaders sharing their stories. I was always active on that front. And so there were many aspects of my own actions that helped me land a role in Microsoft, apart from the fact that I had a clear match between my technical skill set, right? Where I did a lot of programming, I did a lot of SCADA development. I was able to get that to the data center world as well, considering how they do have a lot of SCADA and other electrical systems to monitor. So, we can dive deep into all of these aspects, but it was a full, well-rounded approach that kind of got me to where I am today. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's helpful for folks to hear. And
Yeah.
the two of you have a little bit like your journeys are a little bit juxtaposed, right? Because Matt was at the bigger firm and you chose, and I think Matt, for you,
Yes.
it has a lot to do with culture. So I'd love for you to talk
Mhm.
about culture, kind of, right? You wanted to build the place that you wanted to work
Yeah.
at, right? Can you tell about how you all approach that? Because I think that's to go from, what did you say, 550,000 to 3 employees to 3 people? That's quite the
Right.
change.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I was smiling quite a lot listening to a Purvis journey because ours are very similar, but almost
Yeah.
in reverse. So
Mhm.
I was fortunate enough. I was a finance and accounting undergraduate major, so not
Hmm.
very technical. I graduated in the mid '90s, so I will say I was fortunate enough to have an amazing economy. But I did some interviews for accounting positions, finance positions. I realized, there's no way I can do this for a living. But I was a jack of all trades, and I like problem solving, and I want exposure to a broad range of industry problems, and to learn technology. So I felt the best option for me out of school was to go to one of the very, very large global consultancies because it provided me that breadth of opportunities to where I could begin to learn and understand where I fit and what I love. So I kind of went the opposite way. I was
Hmm.
exposed to a lot, and I slowly narrowed
Yeah.
down the path. And again, I learned a lot over 9.5 years. I advise a lot of people at Kenway, especially those newer to their career, to always have a growth mindset and always be learning. I'd say at some
Yeah.
point, comp's important to everybody, culture should be important to everybody, but one of the biggest things, especially earlier in your career, is learning. I learned a lot. I was a senior manager when I left. And what was motivating me at the time was I had seen a lot, but I want to help build something. I want to help create something. And again, what motivates me is not only building, creating. I got bit by a bit of the entrepreneur bug, but it was also primarily to forge that culture that I would be proud to work for, and that I believe we could attract other great people, and thereby we would attract other great clients. So that was really, really my journey. And it was very similar, but like I said, it's kind of in reverse.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think sometimes folks, get deterred at the starting point in their careers if they maybe land up a job at a smaller or a medium-sized firm. And I think all of us here today are, examples of there's no real path to, landing somewhere. You can always forge that path for yourself, whether it's going from a larger to a smaller firm where you want to be, more responsible, forge a culture, or go from a smaller to a larger firm where you want to be part of something big, even though you may not be at the forefront of it all and want to contribute to a larger mission and what have you, right? So I think everybody has different calling, and I guess the takeaway from this would be that there's no like real one path
That's right.
to success or leadership in general. So yeah.
And I love something else you said.
Yeah.
As you grab those opportunities,
Yeah.
but you had a longer term, bigger kind of goal in mind. And I think
Yes.
that's important, right? Having, in addition to your 1-year plan, have that 5-year
Yeah.
kind of horizon and plan, and maybe even longer, but understand rarely will it be a straight line. It's going to
Yeah.
be a bit circuitous, and based
Yes.
on what you learn, you may also change. You may change your end goal. You may
Yeah.
change that vision of what
Absolutely.
you want to do next. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very interesting path that we've both taken.
Absolutely. I know when I started out, I had people around me, landing jobs at, different sized companies, some large, some small. And I didn't let that get to me as well because, what my medium sized company role offered me was hands on training that I've leveraged to get where I am today. And so I never really looked at it as a step down or something that I wasn't able to achieve maybe in comparison with others. And so that's something that I'd like to highlight for all of our listeners about, the comparisons. There is like a large difference between comparing yourself and being ambitious. It's nice to be inspired by somebody's stories and being ambitious versus being in the comparative zone about, hey, maybe I didn't do it as well as somebody else did it, etc. So I had just had a very recent conversation with somebody about the exact same topic, and it seems to fit in well here in our discussion today. So just wanted to call that out. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's true. And Matt, I want to go back to something that you just said when you kind of pointed out that the advantage of having a 5-year plan, right? As you described it, and Purva talked about she knew where she wanted to get to. What
Yeah.
do you say, either one of you, Matt, let's start with you. And then Apurva, let's get your take on this as well. What do you say to the folks that don't know yet? Like, I have this degree, I like what I do, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it. Like, how would you help advise folks on how to create their path or create their vision?
Hmm.
I would say, first of all, relax. It's okay. And to be honest,
Right?
I graduated in a similar situation from undergrad. And what I can say is, expose yourself to opportunity, and grab as many of those learning opportunities as you can. And that will start to form where do I have passion? Where do I not? And I believe you can set, in that case, really lean into your shorter term goals. And I would say do what you need to do to keep your optionality as vast as it possibly can be. So again, not to toot my own horn, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had really good grades and test scores. So I had that optionality, prior to, and again, there's luck too, right? But you have to create that opportunity, right? Where luck meets hard work. So I had, traditionally engineering focused comp sci technical companies willing to take a chance on me. And I
Hmm.
messed around in undergrad. I might not have. I don't know, right? I have no idea, but I do know optionality was key to form that vision for my career that really, quite honestly, was formed probably 2 years in. And again, I'm a product of the 70s days. I thought I was going to be a partner at this firm, right? That was what our parents did then. That's what we did. And then I realized at some point, you know what? I'm not probably going to be a partner here, but I still enjoy this. I'm learning every day. I'm
Hmm.
surrounded by great people. I'm doing interesting work. So I go year by year. And then I formed this other plan of, I really would love to build something. And then when our founder started and he invited me to join, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Man, I want to call it something I think that's really important that you just shared. Talked about finding what you liked and what you're passionate about and what you weren't, right? And you kind of caution people to find what they're not that interested or that passionate about. And I think that's a piece that gets lost in this, right? As we're trying out new
Hmm.
things. I talk to younger leaders sometimes that are like, oh, feel like I wasted a year and a half in such and such. And it's just like, but you learned something really important, that
Yeah.
you learned that you're not going to spend your career there. And that's like a really important thing to learn. You learn that's not what you want to go to grad school for. Right. And
Hmm.
that actually saves you time and effort and energy. And so I just want to kind of focus on what's a learning opportunity, right? It's a learning period. And figuring out things we don't like can be just as important as figuring out things that we do. And Apurva, I'd love for you to kind of go back and take that question and just how you would advise folks that don't quite know
Yeah.
what their midterm, let alone long term goal is in this field.
Right, exactly. No, I think it's going to build on what all of you guys just said. It's okay not knowing. Looking back at my journey today, I can say yes, there were some pivotal points in there, but definitely right at the beginning of that journey, there wasn't any plan. There wasn't any. It was more of just finding my grip and figuring out and getting the job done. Right, that's what all of us deal with in our initial years. But as we start to like grow into our roles and start to realize, we're doing well at what we're doing and kind of filtering out that noise that this is not what I'm good at that point in your careers, in your journeys, I think it's essential to be mindful. It's essential to kind of then slow down and take a look at what opportunities exist around you. And if those are not clear to you, I think with all of the conversations I've had with great leaders, with other higher ups on my team, it's essential to figure out who can help you at that point in time, right? And so that may be your immediate manager. It may be somebody in your social circle who you're openly able to share your journey and aspirations with. It may be your partner. It may even be your parents at that point. So when you do realize you're at a comfortable point where you can step back a little and evaluate where you want to go, it's essential to identify that point. Um, I've seen lots of people just trying to deliver. Hey, I have a high priority project. I'm just on it day in and day out. I'm, working towards a deliverable. It's great. It's great to meet your goals. It's great to meet your deliverables, but it's also essential to identify at that point, are you being overworked? Are you being compensated well for all of the effort that you're putting in? And so I think my advice to, planning, it doesn't have to be long term. It can very well be short term, but the start to that is that pivotal point where you can step back and start being more mindful. And that's what I've learned in my journey. And, today I'm at a comfortable position where I actually apply that. So, yeah.
That's great advice. And I appreciate what you brought up about identifying kind of leaders that you can learn from,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Have you had formal relationships with any leaders, or has there been like someone that especially has influenced you? And if so, like what have you learned from them?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. I've been lucky to be surrounded by a great working team the moment that I joined Microsoft. And so as the team grew, I had some leaders that I worked with when I joined the team and I was fresh in it. So I had the opportunity to form those relationships, but then they progressed to much greater roles. The teams grew and I eventually fit in at some point. But I was mindful about, maintaining my relationships with those leaders, not with a view for utilizing those relationships for the future or what have you, but always to learn if I'm on the right path, I'm doing the right things, am I going well in my career. And so when those intentions were out there, pure from a learning perspective, from a feedback perspective. It actually worked for both the mentor and the mentee relationship. Also, previous to Microsoft, all of my managers or leaders that gave me an opportunity recognized my good work at the time. I've managed to maintain a good relationship with them. That relation doesn't have to be a social one where you're in touch with them or like checking up on them every time, but one that you can rely on and check out and check in on them every 6 months. Just maintain that ground, alert them of what you're doing. Professional networks like LinkedIn help you keep that connection, keep that bridge as well. And things that I looked up to in most of these leaders that I'm mentioning right now is their ability to actually speak to you as if they care about where you're going to land up in life.
Hmm.
They may or may not contribute to your success, right? They may not be directly a part of where you land and give you that role, give you that visibility, etc., but they're shaping you for it for sure. And so I kind of draw from those aspects of who they are as people, and then some professional aspects as well, but primarily from how they are as leaders personally, as a person.
And I appreciate that the practical piece of that you shared, right? Like, because it's one thing to say that we do have developed relationships, but as folks are younger and coming up, like I hear from folks like, how do I do that? Right? How do
Yeah.
I even just kind of what you're saying is I was going to learn, I was going for feedback, I was checking on
Yes.
them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful insights for folks that are trying to figure out what do I talk to these folks about?
Hmm.
I'm in the break room, we're both getting a cup of coffee, I'm not sure what
Right.
to say, right? So that was, I think, really practical, helpful feedback. Matt, how about you? Like when you think about leaders that you've learned from over the years, how do you look back on that now?
I've had what I would call exposure of varying degrees to many leaders, right? Even the C-level executives of the very large company I work for. But I would say, our founder has been the most influential leader in my life. He certainly has been my supervisor for the longest time. Technically, he's on our board. He still is technically one of my 5 supervisors. But one thing I learned from him, I think I began working for him probably 7 years into my career, and I spent the majority of that time on what you call kind of the line consulting, right? So you form project teams, you come together, you fight the battle, so to speak. You finish the project, whether it's 4 months or 18 or 24 months, and you move on and you kind of do your own thing. So when I began working for Brian, it was the first time I was a part of an organization that was going to be remaining together past one project. And what
Mm,
I learned from him was, up to that point, I would say I led by example, right? I would work
Hmm.
super hard. My technical skills, functional skills, industry knowledge would come forward and people would learn those things from me. But the importance of management and leadership and treating each individual uniquely, that is a guiding principle that we carry forward today at Kenway. And how
Hmm.
Brian was able to, not just with me, but everybody on his team, it was a large team, is adjust communication and management styles to what best suited that individual, and sometimes at that individual at that point in their career. So that was the biggest thing at that point in time, kind of an inflection point of, I think, moving from purely management to leadership, and understanding it's
mm.
more than just leading by example.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
really well said. And I appreciate kind of what you just shared about treating each person uniquely. I think that's something a lot of companies would like to do, but might not see a path to that, right? That might seem, I could say like I feel overwhelming to
Hmm.
how in the world are we gonna have time to do that, right? How are we gonna have systems or processes? Can you say more about how you all accomplish that?
Sure. Again, it's like anything else. It's got to be, we call them guiding principles, but a core value, right? It's one of
Mm.
the undebatable, inarguable things that we stand on. And I don't know, Audrey, if we'll get into this, but it begins with, how do you scale? And in a people related business, right? We're 100% services. We don't build product, we don't sell product, we don't resell product.
Yeah.
You really need to invest in the human being, right? And understand that we won't scale until they are able to go and be trusted to lead, make decisions independently, and
Mhm.
grab, like you did and I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is one of the amazing things Brian said is I struggled with this. Like when we were growing at Kenway, but I stress growing versus scaling. We were growing, and there were others, I was inhibiting our ability to scale by wanting to do everything. And that was management. It was leading by example, but it was not leading. And part of it is trusting the culture, trusting and putting the time into an individual and creating the space where eventually they're formulating their own objectives and they are moving forward and achieving them, and then trusting that there's a governance structure in place that they will come when they have questions or they're at a key fork in the road, so to speak, and come to us as more senior leaders for the help they need when they need it. Not standing over their shoulder. I never knew I was doing these things. But not standing over their shoulder, not micromanaging, and really allowing them the freedom and safe failure to learn and eventually lead on their own.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that I'd like to add about to your question, Audrey, about how would you manage um, expectations and growth for such large organizations and large teams. I think something in Microsoft that I've seen they do is when it comes time for review processes that usual manager led teams follow.
Mhm.
Our tool actually allows us to input answers to questions like what motivates you on a day-to-day basis.
Mm.
And so apart from like recapping, hey, what did you achieve, did you meet your goals, how are you helping the business succeed, there's definitely a career section that kind of allows you to give input on what are some of the topics that keep you motivated at work. What are the kind of praise that calls to you the most? Is it monetary praise? Is it praise in front of your team members? Is it a one-on-one call out to doing great work every time? And some of these questions, people may skip those, or choose to answer it or not. But while you guys were talking, I did realize that space does exist to kind of help managers and teams shape appraisals, shape their teams, and really address very specific maybe cultures and aspirations on the team.
It's a
So
great way to use data, right? Like
yeah,
a tool, like a data tool to get individualized
yeah,
information that a manager can then use, right? So that your manager could approach you about a topic in one way and they
yes,
could approach that same topic with somebody else in a way that makes kind of that's more relevant to them, right?
right.
So that's really helpful. And I think, Apurva, I'd love to hear kind of how you've been developed and like how you see yourself being involved in developing leaders. And Matt, I'm going to bring that question to you next. Like
Mhm.
how are you all developing people in your organizations right now?
Right. I think my answer kind of ties directly into what Matt was sharing earlier about how there's freedom to grow.
Mm,
So when I need that governance, that structure is in place, but I have the playground, so to speak, to kind of explore my opportunities. What's definitely shaping me at work and what I would carry forward in my leadership journey is the opportunity to express myself. So when I have some time on hand, and if I express my desire to kind of enroll myself into a new leadership course or go attend a conference for growth or pursue maybe a degree while working, which I am currently doing, I've always seen support come through from whether it's my leaders at work, my immediate managers, or my peers, right? Because contributing time for something apart from work, you need that support system. If I'm going to be out of work for a couple of days, I need my peers to step up and make
mm,
sure that things run smoothly. If I'm going to be asking for budgets, I need my managers to support that and say, hey, yes, absolutely, this investment in you is something that's key. And so that's what has led to being my shaping in within the leadership structure, and that's what I would carry forward with me when I get that chance to kind of help somebody else grow. And yeah, that's what I would put it as something that's shaping my leadership journey, honestly.
fantastic. Matt, how would you address that? How do you think about developing folks in your company?
Yeah, a lot of it, and Apurva mentioned this. One of the benefits of being at a smaller mid-size, we call
Yeah.
boutique firm, is early and frequent leadership opportunities. So
Mm,
we still thrive on what you would call on-the-job type training, on-the-job type development. However, as we've grown and we've scaled, we're hiring many, many more people, and a lot of colleagues that don't have the benefit, like I did, of a decade at a very large, kind of well-structured organization. So we have evolved into blending the best of both worlds, I believe, or at least trying to do so, where we really lean into two of our core guiding principles. I already mentioned treat each individual uniquely, but
yeah.
also the concept and spirit of entrepreneurial spirit. But over time, we do have levels, and we've got role designations, and we've got a career path. But as I describe it, our COO and I attend every new employee classes onboarding session, and I describe it. It's not a ladder to only climb up or down. It's a climbing wall at Kenway. So we
Mm,
provide you a map, if you will, but not every person needs to follow it the same way. And by the way, depending on where you're at in your career or personal, you might need and want to take a step down to go over, eventually to go up. And we encourage that exploration. You don't have to, but we encourage that exploration, especially earlier in one's career. And we do, back to the entrepreneurship, we put a lot on the individual, right? We lean into having this base to kind of guide yourself, but we really lean into individual goal setting. And we've got a tool we call roles, goals, and tactics. So
mhm,
take what you understand and use your help from your career counselor and anybody else at Kenway you want, but you've got every opportunity to add value for the business in a way that you enjoy and you are passionate about. And that's everything from going out and leveraging training we've already had success with, going out and finding your own. And again, with that, you can start to have very productive bi-directional conversations about where do we take your career. And as we like to say, another benefit of boutique is we will always listen. And then if there's patience with understanding that you want to change from, I've been very technical and I like to pursue change management. I like to pursue it. Great. Bear with us. It might take a few weeks or months in order to downshift on one project and find the right
mhm,
opportunity in the next one. But we heard
yeah.
you. And by the way, here's some things you can do to build your change knowledge over the course of the next weeks or months so you're ready to capitalize on that opportunity when it comes through. So it's kind of how we've thought about it over the years. Admittedly, we started with nothing, and we're still working on it. You can always improve, but I think we've built a more elaborate process and certainly more structure for folks that crave it. But we still lean into those two guiding principles quite a bit.
You both have talked about managing a large number of tasks, activities, responsibilities. How do you choose on a daily basis how you're going to focus your time? Apurva, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the core of my role right now. As a project manager, that I moved to more of a global scale. That has become increasingly important to kind of prioritize, restructure, course correct, and then move on, right? And to me, I let the business guidelines kind of dictate what takes priority. When I don't know where to move forward with, I always just seek help and input from my manager, because tomorrow when things go sideways, it can always be pointed out that, hey, this wasn't prioritized well, or this wasn't given the enough attention that it required, and what have you. And so, not to say that it's happened with me in the past, but I would always want to seek that kind of guidance, because I don't want my day to day be stressful or be unguided, so to speak. And so my first course of action is always to kind of seek that input from my manager. When I say this, I don't mean that I reach out to my manager on a everyday basis or every couple of
Sure.
days, because priorities shift and move. They're very fluid, as Matt would agree, in projects that have fast paced environments. And so my approach to that is to first information gather everything before I go to my manager, so that I'm not in a meeting, rambling away for 10 minutes and explaining the situation, but instead asking for very pointed advice. Hey, this is the information I received. perceived. And so based on this is my judgment of the situation. And I think that we can deprioritize in lieu of the other project, but I'd love to get your input in it. So when I'm approaching my leaders, I'm not coming off as an uninformed person who's just
Mhm.
running around the place and doesn't know what she's doing, but I come across as a person who's done the due diligence and is just looking for guidance. So that brings forth the proactiveness, it brings forth the leadership qualities that your manager wants to see in you, so that if they are not around, let's say for the next couple of weeks, it's not like things are just going to fall off the radar and not get done. So yeah, that's my approach to kind of ever changing deadlines and the fluidity of the environment.
And I think you make a really important point there about the preparedness, right? You're
Yeah.
not saying, boss, what do I do?
Yeah.
You're saying, here's what I see, here's what I've done so far, here's where I expect where we should be going next. This person
Yes.
likely has more information than you. And so you're double
Right.
checking that you're kind of, this is balancing against what they're aware of and other kind of parts of the company, or at least even other parts of your department, but you're taking
Exactly.
them something to react to.
Hmm.
Right. So again,
Hmm.
kind of this is a great instruction, I think, for folks on how to work with leaders, how to
Hmm.
communicate with leaders. It's not just here's my list, where do I start?
Yeah,
Right. To kind of
absolutely.
be much more thoughtful and mindful and prepared ahead of time. And Matt, how about
Agreed.
you? You've got a lot on your plate on a daily basis. How do you manage that? How do you choose what you're going to focus on? How do you figure out what you have to let go?
So I would say in some respects, maybe in some weeks or months, that's the hardest part. I think about being a CEO or kind of whatever top of the pyramid role you want to do. And that can also be in a very large organization, the top of an organization or a business unit within
Right.
a large conglomerate. There isn't anyone telling you what to
Mm,
do. And again, for me, we've done our HR and operations teams and others done an amazing job with succession planning. So
mm,
yes, I still get called into a fire drill here and there, but it's less and less as the years go on. So, for me, I think about very simplistically the job of a CEO or a top executive to establish and steward the culture that you want in the organization,
mhm,
to set a clear and compelling vision for where we're going to be, what we can achieve, ensuring that the resources are applied to those strategies to achieve that vision in a commensurate fashion, right? Saying no to certain things, right? We can't spread ourselves too thin. And then establishing and enforcing an accountability structure that those strategies are being carried out, and we're making the progress that we need to make. And if not, we evaluate why. So I think about my day, week, month, quarter, year along those four themes. My roles, goals, and tactics, I mentioned before, part of our
mhm,
culture. I think we do a good job. I try, as I say, to take our own medicine. So I do roles, goals, and tactics every year, and it is directly aligned to our corporate planning process. So
mhm.
our corporate planning process is also engaging in different ways each year, but it's very collaborative. Every employee participates in that process of our strategic planning. So I can feel confident that what I'm doing at any given time is alignment with what's in the better for all of our employees and the company as
Mm,
a whole.
yeah.
And just some basic things I do that I've learned over the years is you line that up to achieve. Here's what we want to do for the year, and where can I uniquely add value
Mm,
Mm,
given who I am, my experience, my skill sets, and the role, right?
mm,
And then it does change, but some things I do is every Monday morning, right? Mondays get a bad rap. I read a book recently and I forget which it was, so I can't plug it. But Mondays are the best day because every single week it's a chance to renew and refresh.
yeah.
And if you feel like you could have done some things better last week, it's a great chance to reset and do them better the following week. I take the first hour every Monday to kind of go back to my GTs. What was I going to do this month? And see where are we on each of these? And I might recast that detail. I do a similar thing each month. I take a bit more time, and then quarterly we do it as a leadership team. So
mm,
that's kind of how you make sure what you're doing day to day, I think, is mapping well with
Yeah.
the organization. And again, I try to lean into what are the things I'm uniquely positioned to do as opposed to others. What I advise, our more junior colleagues is very similar, to what you're talking about. Yes, have your roles, goals, and tactics, but we encourage everybody to keep their eyes and ears open. And if you see a void of
Mm,
anything at Kenway that's not happening, you think it should, or you think you can do it better, tell someone,
mm.
right? Jump into the void, right? Talk to people about how you can fill it and what you think you can do. So that's how I would look at it as well, is be opportunistic and courageous enough to offer help and, change your goals for that period of time, whatever they might be. But I think you nailed it when you talk about having kind of that support and the backing
Yeah.
of going forward with something like that.
Yeah, no, and I think you brought out a very important point when I was sharing my answer or my approach to, reevaluating priorities. I already, right now, I do have a guiding light in terms of my managers and leaders, but tomorrow I might be that person. And I think apart from being proactive and ensuring that I'm demonstrating those leadership qualities right now, I think it's important to embody that culture in general about thinking about a situation as a leader, like, hey, what could I have done differently and added
Mhm.
value to, and so let me pick up this task versus the other, because I think I can drive this to succession, to a successful end more in a better way than the other task. And so that's what I was gathering from your answer. And this was honestly a learning point for me, so thank you for sharing your thoughts on prioritizing tasks.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you both have talked about things that you've learned over the years, right? And
yeah.
so one of the questions I have for you, and Matt, let's start with you. If you could go back and talk to Matt very early in his career, like what would you share with yourself? Like what advice would you give younger Matt?
That's a great one. I will stand by everything I said about a long-term goal or vision of one's career and evaluating on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis of, am I learning? Am I growing? What I would say though to younger Matt would be to take more chances.
Mm,
I we were all products of our experience, right? And I think without that experience in the first 10 years of my career, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed so fully what we've been able to do at Kenway. I think had I taken more chances, I might have been able to begin the Kenway journey or something like it sooner.
mm.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's what I would say. Follow the same methodology, but maybe take more chances. And
More
again, I was
chances.
probably too inexperienced. I think making decisions with suboptimal information is a big leadership. Uh,
Yeah,
um, it can only be learned, I think. And I think at that point, I felt as I had suboptimal information until I probably had enough that I could have made a decision maybe a couple of years sooner.
great answer. How about you, Apurva? If you could go back and talk to yourself just starting out, what advice
Yeah.
would you give yourself?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what my answer would be. Honestly, I think I did the best with what I had at the time, and I don't say this to, feel good about myself or say, hey, I did the best. I couldn't have done anything better than what I had. But I've realized that when I've, interacted with other folks around me, I've seen other journeys around me. I think that I came out of it pretty strong. I did utilize my resources to the best of my abilities at that time, and I continue to do so. And definitely there's instances where I could have reacted better, handled it better, but I was, like Matt said, naive at that point, pretty early in my career at that point. And so all of those were just learning blocks for me. I absolutely remember those days and incidents and use them as fuel to make sure that I don't repeat those in the future. And so, just as an advice, or if I was talking to my younger self, I would just say, well done. And I think I did a pretty good job, and it shaped me to, bring me up to this point. And I'd say, keep in mind what had happened and what the journey was, and never forget that, so that you always continue to grow. So
That's
yeah.
great. For me, I would go back and tell myself to just settle down and like not feel like
Yeah.
I have to do everything by the time I'm 25. Like my lists were
Ah.
like so long and
Yeah.
so like large, and I needed it all done and I needed it done now. And
Mm.
so I see that in a lot of other folks coming up. There's just trying to kind of break through walls. And
Yeah.
I remember being that person and just kind of like our careers are long, right? There's nothing but
Yeah.
time. We've got nothing
Yeah.
but time. So That's the one for me. So I'm going to wrap us up with the final two questions, and I'm going to ask of both of you. And Apurva, let's start with you on this one. What's the
Okay.
best leadership advice you've received?
Mhm. That's a tough one. Everybody has different styles, everybody has had different journeys. And so the something that I'm resonating with of late is, something that's coming from a powerful book that I read by Shalmina called Show Your Worth. It's
Mm,
a leadership strategy that Shalmina has utilized for herself when she reached her vice president title at the IBM company. And so, something that I'm resonating with at the moment is a term that she coined, which is the power quotient, right? There's going to be a lot of noise around you, there's going to be a lot of changing stimuli around you. But you definitely have a power quotient to choose a empowering response to a disempowering stimuli or stimulus
mhm.
around you. And so I think that's really powerful. That's something that I'm resonating with at the moment, and that's why I choose to share that with our listeners today.
And share the
Yeah,
name of the book and the author again, please.
it's a book called "Show Your Worth" by Shalmina Apji.
Great. Thanks for
Yep,
sharing that. How about you,
absolutely.
Matt? What's some great advice you've received over the years?
Yeah, I think some great advice and something that I've really latched onto is that leadership is a team sport.
Mm,
I
Hmm.
think probably less so in the last 10 years, but I know prior to that there was a lot of leadership was about the big personality CEO. And I think for me and certainly in a people-based business, humility is a key trait that I think will serve leaders well. And that doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you have to think more of other people. The
mm,
team
Hmm.
has to come first. The overall goals and success of the organization um, have to come, well, really first, second, third, all up above individual recognition and praise and those types of things. That's probably some of the best advice that I've gotten. And I think, from my personality type and in the nature of the business we're in, I don't think could be more true.
Humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking more of other people. That should be on a pillow.
That's
That should be on a
powerful. Yeah.
wall. Love it.
Yeah, that's not mine.
Fantastic.
That was also from some book and very smart person
Yeah.
I've read. But you'll hear it. In fact, a colleague of mine quoted it earlier this week, or maybe
Yeah,
last week. But
that's
it is
powerful.
something that I think is and it's an obvious great trait or characteristic to practice. I think maybe undervalued for leadership.
Absolutely agree. Okay, final question. Matt, let's start with you. Is there a mantra that you live by?
Wow. I've been at Kenway for a long time, so I don't feel so bad saying that a mantra I live by. It is our purpose. We call it our why. It's to help and be helped. And I go into every interaction of every day, either and probably first in the role I'm in now, thinking about how I can help someone, whether that's an
Yeah,
employee, a client, a partner, or before you talk about networking and the
yeah,
importance of it. I
yeah.
never looked at networking as a sales function. I look at it as a learning and a
Hmm.
helping function. And I think that would be my mantra. And I think again for leaders, something that's very important and probably underappreciated is the willingness and being humble enough to seek help. I think again, I feel very
Right.
fortunate to have an amazing group of colleagues, 90 some odd strong at Kenway. And I spend more of my time now admitting I have no answers. But I'll think deeply and draw on my 30 years of experience to ask really tough questions and let others come up with the answers. So I would say to help and be helped would be a mantra I try to live by.
Nice.
Apurva, let's give you the final word. Mantra that you live by?
Yes, I was thinking on my answer, and I think I could only come up with this: being authentic to everything
Mm,
that you do, whether it's your leadership, whether it's your work, whether it's the relationships that you're maintaining. When you're not, it shows and it definitely distances people from you. And your network is your power as you grow. And so being authentic is the key to everything. You may not even know how to get the work done, but just because people trust you to do that, you may be given an opportunity or the leeway to try it out. Hey, she seems like a good person who can handle this task. Let's give her a chance to do it. And that has not just stemmed because of anything else, but because of your authentic self. And so that's my mantra. And I've seen and gotten the chance to observe others around me in my journey, and it definitely shows when you're not authentic. So yeah, that's my final word. Thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely. Great way to end. Just thanks so much to you both. This was a really insightful conversation. I think you both shared a lot of things that folks can learn from and things to consider. And you've shown, I think, repeatedly just the many varied ways that folks can get to where they're going,
Yeah.
and kind of given some great examples and some practical tips on how to carry themselves through the journey. So thanks so much to you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
too learned a lot. Thank you. Great
Yeah,
to meet
same.
you.
Thank you.